Ethan, dude. So, how's it going? So that's exciting about Chicago. I think you'll have a really good time there. Like I said, I spent a little bit of time there. Seems like a wicked fun town, especially to be a young college kid out there. I think you'll have a blast, and I'm happy for you, man. So, I think I'm just gonna shoot everything in kind of a long video right now. So let's look at your train beats video first, and that was good. Good camera angle, about a minute long. I could see what's going on. So let's have a look at this. Okay, so nice camera angle. I can see exactly what's going on. Everything looks really good and everything sounds good. You look relaxed. You look like you're feeling it for the most part. Um, every time you hit the kick drum, the camera shakes a little bit. That's why the picture is getting blurry every time the kick drum hits. You probably noticed that. I have that problem all the time. Basically, I don't care for these purposes, but just so you know, if you want to get rid of that, you have to have your camera or phone or whatever on a tripod that has some sort of isolation. So I actually like tape pieces of foam to the bottom of the legs on my tripod, so it kind of creates some isolation from the floor because the floor actually vibrates when you hit the kick drum. Sometimes I mount it on the wall, and I'll have to like put in some foam between the camera bracket and the wall. It just sort of, they probably make things for this, but I usually just kind of rig something up so that you have some isolation so that that doesn't happen. But yeah. Anyways, I don't care for these purposes, but just so you know. So let's go back to the top, and I just want to listen. And actually, I listened to this a couple times already, so it's good. Like almost everything is good about it. The only thing I have to say is that sort of the feel of these grooves kind of changes a little bit. So I think you're doing like 4 bars of each or whatever, and every time you change to the next groove, um, the tempo moves just a little bit. The placement of your backbeat twos and fours on the snare changes ever so slightly, and so we'll listen all the way through and just see if you can hear that, what I'm pointing out. So basically, every time the groove changes, the feel changes a little bit and the time moves just a little bit. Sometimes it takes you a couple bars before you've committed to the actual feeling of the new groove. And this is hard because these grooves are very different from each other. Some of them you're going back and forth with your hands. Some of them are more of a right hand heavy kind of eighth note thing in the right hand sort of thing, and just those two different variations, they feel very different in our bodies, especially at this kind of slowish tempo. The difference between putting the eighth notes in a back and forth between your right and left feels very different from putting the eighth notes just mostly in your right hand. I can't see your foot here, but when I play these, I'm definitely doing a heel toe thing in my left foot. And that really helps kind of lock all of this into a groove so that when the hands change or even the kick drum changes a little bit, I have this really solid rock going on in my left foot and my left leg that can really kind of anchor the whole thing. That in combination with maybe some upper body movement, a little bounce or a little dance or a little sway or head bob or something, that helps me keep all this feeling and sounding and sitting kind of in the same pocket, even though I change things. And so that's what we're talking about here, is how do you play all these within the same pocket? And I think just being aware that there is a little bit of a problem and they're not all in the same pocket, and hopefully listening back to this and being able to hear that, that's step one, just being aware of it. And then, that could be enough. But step two is just noticing, like, what are the constants that you can have in your body even during these transitions. So the things I just mentioned, the heel toe in the left foot and any kind of upper body motion or whatever. And probably like the third thing is just being like ultra comfortable with all these grooves independently, so that when you launch into them, like from beat one, you're just so comfortable playing it that you don't need 2 bars to settle into some sort of pocket with it, or some sort of consistency with the bass drum placement, for example. So that's really the goal. And it's very hard. These are pretty simple beats, and we're not fast, but to do what I'm talking about here takes a little extra work. And really, we're talking about like studio chops here, like, the Gads or the Picaros or whatever. These are the things that those guys really understand. And if someone were to hire you to come in and play a song that has multiple different train beats in it, and you got to record to a click, of course, because it's 2020, and that's pretty much how we do it. Or not, or no click. It doesn't matter. But, if you go into that session and your pocket moves around a little too much between those different grooves, the engineer is not going to be super psyched with you, because we can hear it, and the drums provide the foundation for everything else to lay on top of. And if they're moving around a little bit, or if they're not consistent enough, that engineer is going to have to go in and try to edit all of that shit. And editing is super tedious and annoying and takes a long time. So even if they're getting paid for it, it's like not a task that people enjoy doing most of the time. So that's the thing about the Gads and the Picaros and the Aaron Sterlings and the Aaron Comases and the whoever. Like, those guys, they get so much work because nobody has to edit them. They just make everyone's life so easy. And so, it saves people time and money and frustration. Anyways, I'll stop rambling. Let's listen to this 50-second video and just see if you can notice. The things I'm talking about are very subtle. You really have to pay attention and open your ears and in order to kind of hear and recognize these things. But, for the people that have ears, like maybe the engineer that would want to hire you, well, they're gonna hear it. And if you don't hear it and they do hear it, then that's kind of a conflict of interest. So it's just a matter of being aware of this and opening up your ears so that you can actually hear it. and realizing that and being like, okay, well, yeah, that take wasn't quite good enough, and now I'm hearing kind of what I was doing. So let me do another take and see if I can keep the pocket more consistent. We don't have to get super critical or negative on ourselves. This is natural. These are natural issues we're talking about here, and it just takes awareness and practice and time and experience. And once you have all those things, then these issues get smaller and smaller. Okay, so let's listen to this and see if you can notice what I was talking about. Okay, so maybe you heard what I was talking about. I think it's definitely pretty obvious, and like I said, hearing this again just now, even within an individual groove, it's not super committed yet, and it's hard to get that in only 4 bars. A lot of the times we're just sitting on a groove for like the entire song, and you have more time, and it's sort of easier to commit when you know that you don't have to change in 20 seconds or whatever. So it wouldn't hurt to spend more time just on each one of these, so that on their own they feel great, like I mentioned before. So anyways, here's what I think we should do with this, and I'm getting very nitpicky. 98% of what you did here is awesome, and it's just great, man. You're playing great. It's just like this 2% thing that I'm bringing up that will separate you from the guy that's actually going to get the gig. So it's definitely worth talking about. So here's what I think we should do. Spend a little more time on these. Let's just hang out at the same tempo. We don't need to. It's not about speed here. And for next week, go into Reaper and record yourself. Do like, let's see, do 4 takes. So go into Reaper and do 4 takes, of what you just played here, 4 bars of each one. So each take is 50 seconds long or whatever. And on the first take, set yourself up a dedicated click track and record to the click. And then stop, and then do another take. This can all be within the same project, on the same track. For the second take, turn the click off and record the same thing without a click. And then third take, do it again with the click. And then fourth take, do it again without the click. Okay. And then send me those files, and we'll look at them next week. And so we're just going to A/B. And so they don't have to be perfect. We want a very honest, sort of transparent representation of where you're at with that. So if you do a take and you don't think it's good enough, just keep going, because we want to hear those mistakes. We're pretending that you're going into the studio someone hired you to come in, and they're giving you 4 passes on this song, and that's all you have. So kind of a real world situation. All right, so let's do that with these train beats, and cool. Let's move on. So, okay, let's look at the samba stuff. So I already set up a Reaper project here. We'll open this up. Cool. So we got all of these different snippets from your sambas, and we got the click down here. I listened to these a little bit, and I think you made good decisions on these. I think this is some of the best stuff from what you had recorded. So, yeah, it seems to me like you kind of picked out the good stuff, which was the goal. What I think we should do, or what I think you should do, is make sure that all of these are loopable. So that is, when we get to the end and it goes back to the beginning, there's a nice clean seam there. No clicks or pops or no unnatural transitions. So let's just check each of these and see where we're at with those. So here's the end of the first one going back to the beginning of the first one. So no clicks or pops that I could hear right there, but the beginning of this is so different from the end of it. Certainly dynamically, the end is quite a bit louder than the beginning, so that when it loops back, it makes it sound like it's not clean. It's not natural. Probably sonically, you're kind of playing different things too. Yeah, so you were sort of in a different territory here than you were at the beginning. So even we could kind of just look at the waveforms. I bring those up. That's a shift arrow up or arrow down, by the way, to increase your waveforms or decrease. Now this does nothing in terms of actual volume. It's just a visual thing inside of Reaper, so we can kind of see what's going on better. Bring that down just a little bit. So, I mean, we're kind of softer over here, and then it starts to get similar in volume to the end, like maybe in here or something. So, you know, maybe what you'd want to do is just ditch the stuff at the beginning and find a good place to split it somewhere in here. You know, you can make the whole thing shorter. Or maybe that's not good in there. Maybe you got to come way over here, you know. Or maybe you decide you don't like any of that stuff towards the end, but you really like the beginning, so you're just going to make it super short here and get rid of all of this and keep that. So whatever you want to do. But you got to find... I'm not going to do this now because we got into this last week or 2 weeks ago or whenever that was. But, you know, find the ideal place, hopefully, to split it in your waveform on the right beat and put in your little micro fades and snap it to the grid and then just, you know, turn it into something that's a natural sounding loop. So let's look at the next one. When you have all these set up the way I do, in order to loop it, you have to have this time selection set to the length of the one that you're actually listening to. So let's check this one. So I think I heard a little click in there, and it sounds like maybe there was either not enough or maybe a little too much of something happening, either at the end or right at the beginning. It's just not a very natural loop, so that one will need a little work. I'll check this one. So that one's not horrible, right? But it does, like, I mean, right on beat one at the beginning, it sort of drops in dynamic. You're in the same kind of territory, though. You got this tom thing going on, and so this one might not be too hard to find a split that works. Next one. Whoops. Hear that again. So that's a little weird, right? I didn't hear clicks or pops necessarily, but it sounds like you're doing something very different here than you are here. So maybe just like cut something here or cut something there and find something that sounds a little more natural. Check this one real quick. Yeah, kind of weird. Again, it's just sort of very different here from what it is here. And this all makes sense, right? Because you just took out big chunks from that project. So naturally, we'd be having this sort of issue right here. So, but that's okay. The goal is to just, split things where you need to and make them as short as you have to in order so that you get something that we can actually turn into a seamless loop. Check this one. This one actually worked really well, didn't it? Even though it's different here than it is here, it kind of sounded like the drummer, that is you, just sort of changed it up. It sounds very natural, so that one might not need any work. Okay, so I guess that's the goal for this week, for this stuff. We're going to keep working with this stuff. I know we sort of ignored it last week because I spent too much time talking about the other stuff. Wasn't able to get to this, but this stuff is cool, and I have something very interesting and sort of out of the box in mind for this that I think you'll dig. But we need to make sure they're loopable things before we can move on to that next step. So, oh, well, I'm thinking of it. From now on, well, the train beat stuff, I don't care. You can just send me files. But for this and for the loops and samples thing that we were working on, so we got many projects going on right now. For this and the loops samples thing, I want you to try to send me Reaper projects from now on instead of the individual stems or wave files or whatever. I haven't done this before, but I'm sure it's just totally doable. So basically, let's pretend that you just, I'll show you how to do this right now. Let's pretend that you just set up this project and you went in and you made everything cool and you're ready to bounce stuff out to send to me. So you go to that same render thing, and in this case, oh wait, hang on. No, we don't go to the render thing. We're going to save the whole project. So go to File and Save Project As. And then, actually, hang on. I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going back to, not that. Hang on, bear with me. I think we're back here. Okay, so this folder, Sambas, I set this up last week or whatever. This was the folder that I put your stems into. And then we have these repeats files as well, because as you know, once you load wave files or whatever into Reaper, Reaper automatically pushes these peak files into the same location as your wave files or stems or whatever. And we need all this to be there. So basically what I would do is set up a folder for your files that you're then going to load into Reaper. So you probably need to start from scratch on this, so we make sure we have everything in one place. So do what I did here. Just set up a folder, call it Sambas or whatever you want. Make sure you got your files in there, your stems, and then load them into Reaper, and it will automatically put these peak files in here because we need those as well. And then this folder is going to be the location that we want to save the actual project to. Okay, so back to File, save project as, and I called it Ethan Sambas. You can call it whatever you want. It's just basically a name for the actual Reaper project. And then, so I have all this in an external hard drive. It's just called 10.9. And then within that hard drive, I have tons of folders, but then I have my students folder. And then over here, I have Ethan. And then over here, I have another folder that has the folder I was just talking about in it called Sambas. So once we get to that folder, it's wherever you put it on your computer, but you got to find that folder, and that's where you're going to save this project to. So if we just hit save, it saves all that stuff, and then back to that Sambas folder, we can see it's there, right? So Sambas folder, all that stuff is still there. And Reaper automatically saves these two things. It saves the audio files, which is essentially these, but it has to be in the specific folder, I believe. And then this, the .rpp file, this is the actual project. So if I close Reaper and then we want to access this project, all you got to do is double click on that guy and it automatically opens Reaper to that project. So my point is, from now on, send me this folder through WeTransfer. So whatever folder you created that houses all of this shit, send me that. And then theoretically, I get that and I have everything that needs to be here, and I can just double click on this project file and I end up with your project opening on my computer in Reaper, and it'll make our lives easier. And then, yeah, cool. All right, so hope that makes sense. And I think we're good here, right? So we're just making all those loopable, and then you're going to send me the folder that has everything in it with the project, etc., etc. Awesome. Okay, let's dive into your loops, samples stuff. So I already started a project for that over here. Cool. So yeah, theoretically, I could send you this project and then you don't have to do this, but I think it would be helpful for you to go through this process of setting up your project to look like this. I think for now, this is sort of a logical layout for us, and should make sense. So basically, you sent me all the right stuff. This is cool. We have your your original loops of you playing the actual drum kit, and then we have all of the samples that you use to recreate the beat. And I just organized them like this. So maybe it helps if I just explain this a little bit. So let me make it a little bigger. So here in green, we're just looking at all your high density stuff. So I'm going to get rid of this for a second. So basically, if you just put all the high density stuff together, it would look something like this. And then I created another track that I called high density bus. So basically I created a bus track for each of these grooves. And what a bus track does is it sort of acts as like a bus in a way. It houses all of the tracks that are underneath it when you click this little plus sign here and you get this little folder indentation here. That means that this track now has control over these 4 tracks. But it doesn't have control over any of these because there's no indentation there. So hopefully this makes sense. It's sort of a hierarchy. The bus track now can control these. So for example, if we wanted to change the volume on all 4 of these tracks at the same time, we can just go to the bus track mixer right here and just up and down the fader. And now we have control over all of those samples at the same time, which is going to come in super handy for what we're going to do with all these things. So basically, set your project up to look like this, more or less. Obviously, the colors can be whatever you want. And I just put the original groove right at the top, and then the bus track, and then I made sure to folder out those 4 so they're actually functioning within this bus track. If you hover over this part of the track, you're going to see those little things. We have an X here, which would change it. It brings it back. If we hit the plus, it creates the folder. If you're not seeing those things, it means that this is too small. See, we can't see it now when the track is so tiny. So you have to expand your tracks enough so that that actually shows up. So it's the same thing down here. Same thing down here. Okay? So I think that should make sense. Let's listen to these sample grooves a little bit. So now that I have them all set up as buses, I can just, even though we don't see any waveforms here, I could just solo the bus track instead of having to like select all these and solo all of them, etc., etc. Since I have a bus track, I have control over all of those. So I can just solo that and we'll be able to hear it. Compare it to the original. Why am I hearing other things? Oh, okay. That guy was soloed down there. I was like, why does it sound so fucked up? All right. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I know you're hating that, and this is it's a common problem. Always in the hi-hat part, using sampled hi-hats when they're on the grid and they're all the same sample and they're all the same volume or velocity. That's what you get, man. You get machine gun hi-hat parts. So one thing is just by changing the mix on that, it probably helps quite a bit. Like right now, the hi-hat's like the loudest thing in the mix. So let's see, this is hi-hat and this is hi-hat. If we just bring that down in the mix, it probably sounds better. The kick and the snare are very low right now too, so we could probably bring those up. So even with just a little bit of a mix change, this whole thing will sound a little bit better. Right? That's already so much better compared to this. Right? It's like massive difference. But what else could we potentially do to make that hi-hat sound a little better? Let's listen to the original again. So in your part here, I know you're playing 16th notes or whatever you want to think of those as being. But in your part, you have tons of accents going on. You're sort of accenting the hi-hat with your kick drum in a lot of places. And there's a lot of 16th notes that, even though you're probably playing them, we don't even hear them because they're just so ghosted compared to the other notes. So I think it would be valuable to try to make your hi-hat part here sound closer to this one. Just by changing the velocity or the volume of the actual notes. So obviously it being on the grid is kind of an issue, but let's just go with it for now. And it being all the same sample is definitely a big part of the issue. But, if you want to grab another sample of your hi-hat to work with, that might be a good idea. Like, it sounds like this guy that we had is fairly tight. If you want to grab another tight hi-hat that's like slightly looser, like laying into it with the shoulder of your stick, more like of what we have up here, that would help a lot. But you could just change the volume of things. Let's listen to this one real quick. With this, that actually sounds kind of cool, huh? Sort of digging that. These together. So it's a little hard for me to tell what's really happening here because we only have 2 tracks. So I don't know if you want to try to redo this, but if you have control over like every single individual note, you might need a couple more tracks or whatever. But basically what I would do is it's as simple as like if you were to redo this and let's say you have a sample here and you want to make this louder so you get an accent, just for example. So you would highlight and then right click and then go to item properties. And then over here, this is our volume knob, if you will, volume fader. And this is the pan fader, just it says volume pan. We don't care about pan right now, but so this is the volume. So you could just like crank this sucker. So you went up 12 dB, which is probably way too much, but let's just go with that for now and then hit apply and then okay. And you can see that this guy became super loud now. That actually sounds a lot better just having that one accent on beat 1 or whatever it is. Yeah, Cool. So ideally, you'll have control over all your hi-hat samples. Hopefully you save that into a project or you still have it or whatever, so you don't have to redo it. But you'd want to go in and right click on every individual sample and change the volume, either bringing them up or bringing them down to reflect what you had going on the original part. And just that will have such a great impact on this whole thing. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to blend the original groove with all the samples, which is the whole point of this, which maybe I haven't mentioned yet. But it's going to give us control over the mix, essentially. So anyways, get rid of my mixer here. Let's come and check out the rest of these. So original, low density. I'm hearing a little click or pop, something in here. This loop isn't quite as good as it could be. It kind of looks okay, but what the hell's going on there? If you could play around with this just a little bit more, the end and the beginning, either making them a little shorter or a little longer if you have to, but probably just working with fades or something. It sounds, maybe this is the one I said was good enough last week, and now that I'm hearing it again, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know if it's good enough. It's hard because we have that open hi-hat at the end, but I think it could be a little better. See if you can make that seem a little bit cleaner, if you will, and then compare it to the samples here. I think you have a kick drum note here, right? Yeah, there's a kick drum note here. So this open hi-hat sounds empty right here because there's no kick drum with it. So I think we need another kick drum on that. Other than that, this is totally working. Even with just a little mix change, it'll sound pretty decent. I know that the hi-hat sample, well, all the samples, they sound very different from what you had up here. A lot of that is because these were quote-unquote close mic'd, whereas this is a room sound. Same drums, and I'm assuming same tuning. Are they the same tuning? Certainly close. Same drums, same heads, in the same room, but they sound so different, mostly because of the way they were mic'd. This was close mic'd, and they're all separated, and they have no bleed. And this is just one room mic with tons of bleed and tons of room sound. So that's why they sound so different, but that's okay. We're going to work with this. Okay, medium density. The seam here is not so great. I actually looked at this earlier, and the problem is, if we go to the end, see this stuff here? I don't know what that is, but I don't think we need it to be there. So the split probably should have happened before this. Let me see if I can show you that right now. So this stuff probably happened before. Wait, no, this stuff probably happened like, yeah, it's like part of beat one for wherever this went, the direction this went. And it's more stuff than we needed, which is why the seam there is sounding like crap. So what if we just split it like here? And we just get rid of that. And then we snap it to the grid. And we put in a little fade. Now we listen. Fixed, right? There's still a tiny hesitation. Let's look at the beginning. Yeah, it's not bad. This is maybe a little lengthy. What if we take off some of this? Bring that back to the beginning. It just sounded like there was a little hesitation, a little bit too much space. And because I shortened that, we have to go to the end and then snap it to the grid again. Listen again. Yeah, I mean, there's a little extra space there, but it's not bad. It sounds pretty cool. It sounds natural. It sounds live. You know, it's not super precise, but there's no clicks or pops, and it sounds pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. Compared to the samples version now. So it's not bad, right? But it sounds a little artificial because of the ride symbol. Where is that? This is ride. Okay, so there's two rides. Let's put those together. No, that sounds good. I was wrong. What track is it? The snare. I think these are a little short. Your samples here, they could be longer. I mean, in the context of the whole thing, I guess it doesn't sound too bad, but by itself, it's like, ooh, those are really short. They could be longer. Right? They sound super artificial. I would go back and make those as long as you can. If you have to do another track to fit them in, then you have to do another track. The problem is, of course, this one at the end. So, once you redo this and make these longer, I can show you a trick that will fix this here. But because these are all short, I can't really show you that right now. So yeah, if you would redo these samples so that they're longer. We need more sustain on there. It just sounds too artificial. And then obviously the one at the end is still going to sound artificial, but I can show you a trick for that next week. Okay, let me just check the kick. Yeah, so not horrible. A little shorter than I would want. Probably you wanted to do that because of these two here, but it would have made more sense to create another track. So, you know, it's just like this old school manual way of doing things. Like, the sound is the most important thing, and how you arrange it is based on the sound that you want. So you would have to create another track to fit in another kick drum note so that you end up with more sustain. It's not as horrible in the kick here compared to the snare, but it's not ideal. And then, what's this guy up here? Okay, so that's all cool. That's hi-hat with your foot. All right, so you have some work cut out for you here in this project, right? You got to set up the project like this, and then you got to tweak these seams a little bit more so they sound smooth. Sorry for the background noise. My girlfriend's going in and out of the cabin here, shutting the door left and right. Anyways, so cleaning up the seams, cleaning up some of those samples, and Let's see. Do I want to throw something else at you? No, I don't think I do. The next step is going to be creating baselines. I'll tell you that. And I need to dive into a couple plugins and sort of suggest what plugin you might want to use for that. And that's going to take a whole bunch more time, and we're already at 50 minutes up here. And so I think we'll call it there for today. So cool, dude. Those three things: the train beats, the samba tweaks that we talked about, and then coming in here and tweaking all this stuff. You can send me the train beat, just the wave files is fine. I just want to look at those, and we'll A/B them and talk a little about them next week, and then we'll probably move on from train beats, maybe. Or maybe I'll decide that we need to look at it a little bit more. Next thing, drum-wise, we'll look at probably is some reggae stuff, which will be cool. And then, we'll look at the samba stuff and start to move forward with that next week. And then we'll come back to this and start to move forward with this next week. Groovy. Okay. I'm getting out of here. Hope this stuff helps, man. Hope you're doing well with all this funky ass weird times we're in. It's fucking weird, isn't it? I'm doing pretty well, but it's like, it's kind of dragging on, right? It's just like, don't really know. I mean, I stay busy, I got all kinds of projects going on at home, doing all kinds of stuff, but it's like, the whole world is on hold right now. It's like a giant pause button. It's very, very strange. So, if you're struggling at all or feeling like it's fucking weird, it's because it is, dude. It's just fucking weird. So, all right. I'll talk to you later. Adios.